Ghost was in there.
That's holding it up. Now, what this hat truss does, though, if you think about it, it spans 65 feet in one direction, in this longer direction on each side, and 35 feet on the shorter direction on this side. And everybody's familiar with train bridges, those things you drive, these big old train cars loaded with trestles, train trestles. That's what we're talking about. And this one's 5 stories tall. There's one out in McQueenie right next to my tap room that's 3 stories tall, maybe 2.5 stories tall, and it carries and it spans like probably 200 feet, or maybe more, 250 feet, and it's only 2.5 stories. And whereas this one here spans only 65 and 35 feet and is 5 stories tall. And what I'm driving at is you could drive a train and park a train loaded. In other words, this thing can carry a lot of weight. And the North Tower, when it was hit, it's only 8 stories from the top. That means that even if the vertical columns were not connected to each other, they would be held up by the hat truss on the North Tower. So, all the exterior columns were 100,000 psi steel, the strongest you can get. It's heat treated, and they were 14 inches by 14 inches square. And they actually form what is called a verandel truss. And one of the architects that was working in association with the main architect on this project said that it was just like a 209-foot deep beam is what we're looking at on the sides of this building. So we'll move to the next one, and we're going to what I want to do is get everybody comfortable with the way that this building is really designed. So just proportionately, you can draw a 7x7 square. It's 2 squares on the one side, 2 squares on the other, and 3 in the middle. You got 4 on one side, on the other side, and 1.5 on each end. So now you can sketch this in your sleep if you wanted to and know exactly what the building core was like.
But the media lied and said that didn't exist.
That's right. Said it's not there, and it was all run by trusses, lightweight metal trusses, that went all the way.
That wouldn't even have held the building up. It's just an asinine lie when the plans for the building have been public for decades.
That's right. So, and this part, the middle core, is heavy steel and with heavy girders. Then there's trusses on that, but they are connected to heavy girders going both ways, connected to heavy steel columns. Now down here in this portion, that does have lightweight steel trusses, but they are also doubled. They're 3 foot deep, and they're doubled, and they go both ways, which means a space frame. And actually, when this building was being designed, the articles and literature on it actually called it a space frame floor, and that's what they had. So in order to have, and we're going to get to that right here, what it looks like. Right here, these trusses are going both ways. This line right here shows a truss heading that way, and these are trusses heading this way. Now, there's a truss, double truss, that connects every column on the exterior back to the core. And there are trusses at every low part of the web right here that goes the other way. So, in fact, if you look at this, we take a section right here at section C. Now, these trusses are running out to the exterior wall. Here's the exterior steel. Here's the interior heavy steel. This corrugated metal decking is running towards the exterior. So it doesn't roll up. If you hit it, it acts as a knife blade because it won't buckle up. It won't roll up because the trusses are actually, the tops of the trusses are poured into the concrete there. The concrete is poured around the tops of the trusses.
So this is built like a brick, you know what house.
Oh, you got it. Now we're getting the idea of what this thing's like. And here's the exterior. This is like I call it a cheese grater. You've got and here's the exterior wall, what it looks like. These things are 3'3" center to center.
And that's why the planes evaporated, but 2 magic passports, not 1, but 2, drifted down unhurt and were found that day by the government.
Yeah, in one piece.
Oh, but it flew into an armored cheese grater.
That's exactly right. And so here's the size of the jet. The fuselage of the jet is the inner red circle. The orange circle on the inside is the size of the jet engine. And you can see what trouble it did when it hit this thing. It is just like a cheese grater. Now, going 530 miles an hour, you got to remember that. If it was at landing speed, it probably would not have pierced the outer wall, and they knew that. See, now that we know that nanothermite has been used on this building, now we know that they planned every piece of it. They planned the speed of the jet. They planned everything about it. Because if they had run it slower,
would have dented the building that bounced off.
Correct. And they didn't want that. And now we know, too, that that's why that building 2 fell first, South Tower fell first, is because the firemen had reached the 78th floor. They were going to put it out. They radioed back.
They were saying the fires aren't even here. This is no big. People were standing next to columns, waving. So it wasn't melting their bodies or even hurting them, but giant columns suddenly melted and blew up. The fires had dissipated. Heat had gone down, but you got to get rid of those firefighters. They're about to find the evidence.
Well, yeah, and if the whole object we now know was to get rid of the buildings in the first place, because they had to remove all this asbestos.
Ron, let me ask you this: we may have to go into overdrive, which will then just be on prisonplanet.tv and infowars.com. Okay. How long is this going to take? I may have to skip this break too. That's fine. I don't. It's not good for our affiliates.
Let me see. Let's only do this one more sheet.
No. Do you have to go somewhere?
I don't.
Gentlemen, can we do 20 minutes of overdrive? This is. I'm going to go ahead and take the break because we're on XM and a bunch of AM and FMs coming up, and then we'll have 5 more minutes at the stations here. And what I'll do is in a few weeks I'll even re-air this in another hour, so the stations all get to air it. But people will have to go to prisonplanet.tv or infowars.com only on those audio streams and video streams to get the rest of this. So I want you to take your time. Continue.
Okay. Well, this now I'm really beginning to get into exactly how these buildings function. As I've talked about before, we have this 5-story hat truss on the top that can work in tension. But actually, the more I study this building, we don't even need the tension. We don't need the tension carrying hat truss because right here is how this is summarized. We know that in here that because it's a space frame floor with trusses running in both directions, that it cannot collapse. It cannot collapse all the way across the floor just because you've damaged a portion of it. It has to, these are still connected to the outer columns. On the North Tower, these columns were not severed. They go all the way up to the top. Now this pink line, reddish pink line, are spandrel panels that are 54 inches deep of 2-inch steel that is welded to every column. Now all of this is still in place. It's still holding columns. It's still holding floors. And the reason why that these are now acting as long span beams over to both columns, which has about probably 15 columns on each side of this. So all of this, what is happening is all of this damage is getting compartmentalized. It's not spreading anywhere, even the collapsing floors. This building is just not designed.
Well, the designer said it's made of a plane hits it. It's like a mosquito going into a net. It just catches it.
Well, let me even. It's worse than that. And I've heard people say it's like poking a pencil through a screen. Wrong analogy altogether, because a screen, we all know, a door screen is not structural. And it is, and the structure of a screen is the frame of the door, and you can put your hand through it if you drive it hard enough. But that's not what this building is. This is more like a grate. It's like a very powerful steel grate. And whatever hits that thing is going to be shredded. It's going to be shredded.
Well, then you get their lies about the fires melting steel or even weakening it. Everybody knows that your barbecue pit, it doesn't weaken or melt. I mean, and those are fires, 500, 600, 1,000 degrees hotter. I mean, this was a pathetically low-level fire. Most of the fuel was dissipated in the big plume on impact as it was oxygenated. And we're going to come back to do an abbreviated 5 minutes on this as the main show ends, the main transmission. Then we're going to do 20 minutes of uninterrupted transmission, one place, Infowars.com. Architect engineer Ron Avery is with us this Saturday. He's going to do a long, detailed hour-plus analysis with other top experts at the Doubletree Hotel, I-35, North Austin. It's free. Be there. Call the media.